I wanna say it was a cover song that you were singing. I don't think it was any of your originals that you were singing with them. Did you do any originals that day? Because I know you did Forever True in that set.
That time, yeah, I did do like a lot of originals. There is a couple covers I do, so it's kind of mixed up. Like as far as I would say my first album, it was Endless Memory, Nice Like Rice, and Let's Fall in Love. Those were like the songs that are covers that I redid, like kind of like my own way, and then the rest are my songs. So the set back then was mixed up, like with covers and like originals. Now I feel like they're all originals because I've just written more songs, but a lot of them haven't been recorded yet. But at that performance, there was a couple that it was like mixed up, like originals and covers.
Yeah, there was a moment where you were singing. I'm trying to recreate it, but I don't remember like the melody or whatever it was. But you were singing and you were like about to finish up like the phrase, and then you kind of just stared at the horn players like for a sec, and then you like turned back to look at the audience, and the horn players, they like did a little like horn fill, and it was perfect. And then the trumpet player looked at the sax player as soon as they finished doing it, and the sax player just smiled and he was like,
I think I know what you're talking about. There is a part where we did God, what song did we do it with? I think I know what you're talking about. I think we did It's Too Late to Turn Back Now.
I think so. It was like a very subtle.
I think I did that with Forever True, and that wasn't like we didn't rehearse.
Oh, okay.
And I remember they were telling me like, oh, I feel like going into this song when I hear that song, and I'm all, do it, like let's do it.
Yeah.
So we briefly talked about it, but we didn't have a rehearsal, but we briefly talked about them all. If you guys think you can pull it off, and we look at each other, because that's the audience doesn't really notice, but we kind of give each other those little signals,
Yeah.
But then when you see it on video, you could tell like that we're kind of like communicating like just by looking at each other like, all right, like this is gonna happen.
I guess I'm not sure if it's super easy to tell. I guess I was just like I watch that type of stuff, because like I at first when I first was going and like watching your videos, I was noticing you have like different bands. And then when I talked to Chris and he kind of cleared that up for me, I'm like, oh, okay. So when I saw that this festival was like in a different country, I'm like, what band is this, And so now you're telling me you guys didn't even have a rehearsal. I'm like, that's even crazy.
Yeah, it was, dude, I was so blown away. I'm like, how the heck did we pull that off? That's insane. But we did. And it was like this big festival. I was like, oh shit, this better, like, you just feel like all these things. But I think as an artist, you just have to like make the best out of the situation. Don't stress out and kind of like believe in what you could do and believe in your skill level to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did that day. I was like, we got this. And when you have that attitude, it just kind of happens,
Yeah, I think too, I mean, you might be being a little humble here, but I think with all that you're talking about, like how you're saying like when, as an artist, you just gotta like tackle things. It seems like you've been tackling things for a while because I've been, seeing how long you've been doing this. The record came out in the first one came out in 2013, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you've been probably performing even longer than that. And when I talked to Danny about you guys when you guys were rehearsing for the Woman to Woman show, she was like, yeah, she was super professional. Like,
oh, that's so sweet. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I think we've all been doing it long enough that we can kind of like get that mentality of hey, let's pull it off, we got this kind of thing. Like definitely, I mean, it's experience, but I feel like I got that skill throughout these past years though, because like I said, you always kind of grow as an artist. You go through different experiences and you just have to like make the best of it and just like go with the flow. And so after having those experiences, I feel like you're always just like ready for anything. You kind of have to be ready for anything,
Yeah.
But it's always good to have a rehearsal, don't get me wrong, but
for sure,
sometimes like I said, shit happens. You don't get to rehearse and you have to like pull it off, and you owe it to the audience, you owe it to them. They're there waiting all day, and I want to make it worth it for them, and I want them to feel like that was all, like I had a good time, or like not only do I want to approve of my performance, but I also want the audience to be happy, obviously. So you owe it to them, so you have to just suck it up and do what you got to do. So that's kind of like my mentality, I feel, with everything.
I got you.
Yeah.
When you were dipping into like the more Rocksteady music from like ska punk, what about Ken Booth and Alton Ellis and artists like that was like what caught your attention? Like what about them specifically?
I think just like how raw it was and how real it felt. You know, it had so much feeling. I felt like, you know, not that no other music has emotion and feeling, but I think I was getting into like soul music and listening to oldies and stuff. And then when I discovered Rocksteady, I was like, wow, this is like oldies and reggae mixed together, like the kind of like the best of both worlds, you know, like oldies soul and rock and reggae had a baby. Like it's like, you know, Rocksteady. So when I heard it, I just caught my attention. I just felt like, man, this sounds so dope. Like oldies, but it has a reggae beat. Like that's how, like, to put it in simple words, you know, like that's how I thought of it. And the more I started finding out about these artists and the more I got into the scene, and you know, like a lot of the times you meet people that kind of are like, do you know like this artist or whatever, you know, like when you're younger you like talk to people about music,
Yeah.
and then they're like, oh, you know that like Madness song is like actually by this person, and oh, like that special song is by, like that's kind of how I like discovered the roots, is by backtracking and like digging deeper, you know. And this is like before, you know, YouTube, and like now I still find like songs I've never heard. I'm like, how have I not heard this song? But it's because you have like YouTube, and then other people are uploading their stuff, so it's like cool, it's very convenient. But at that time we had the internet, but like it's not like now where it's like with you 24/7, you know, like on your phone. So I backtracked. I would just hear something, and then someone would be like, oh, you know, like that's by Prince Buster, you know, that's by like so and so, and I'm like, oh, cool. And like I like backtracked, and then from there I just started listening to everything and got compilations, all the Trojan box sets, Studio One, like all that stuff. So I just started getting into like collecting too, like just music, not necessarily records, but just like music in general. And then I started like getting into the records, like, oh, I want records, you know, like, and then I stopped for a time because now it ain't cheap. Records are expensive. I should have bought records back then before like now, because now it's like crazy.
Yeah, now it's like a collector's item, you know.
Like I got a couple at that time, and then you know I would go to Amoeba, I would find more stuff. So yeah, like those compilations showed me like so many artists. Kind of like when you listen to like Punkorama or something, and you find out about like, you know, the compilations are dope. Like a lot of people that come across them, like they find out about other artists, and they're like, whoa, who's that? And then you know it goes on from there. So that's kind of like what caught my attention, is just the style, how raw it was. It's just the authentic roots sound. Like, wow, this is the roots of everything else that's out there. Like, and it's amazing. So that's like what kind of caught my attention, just the sound of it. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like I listen to it and it just makes me feel a certain way. And that's why I just like got so drawn to it. It just makes me feel good.
When I go back and I listen to like old records like that, what I dig about that is the warmness of the tones, like in the records. You know what I'm saying?
All the vocals.
It's more analog than you know what I'm saying, than super high definition. You know.
So much talent too, you know, like it should be like blown up, you know, but there's so much music out there that's like kind of, you know, underground, and it's kind of up to us to like put that out there. So I always try my best to expose like what I'm about and why I do what I do, and I like try to expose like this is like what I'm into, this is where I got it from. And people that might not know about, you know, traditional ska, Rocksteady or anything, and then they're like, oh, like I like how this sounds, and I'm like, yeah, this is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's important to always like expose where your influences are from, and all that. So people that don't know can like be like, hey, let me take a look, you know, and give them the credit that they deserve.
Yeah. On a more local level, like when you see like, for example, like the reggae scene is very it's usually like in like 21 and up spots, you know what I'm saying? It's we got the punk scene, which is still kind of in like the backyards. They still have their fair share of bar shows.
Yeah.
The ska scene is like, you know, in the venues. Mostly they mostly are with the all ages crowd. From like '07 to like, I don't know, like 2014, I'd say they were like all like throwing shows together, and then they just kind of stopped. And now I've seen everybody just kind of stick to their own. I feel like all the musicians they still all know each other, and they're still friends. And they still like go in between like the scenes, but they all kind of like keep it separate. Like even like in Orange County, there's like a third wave thing going on, you know. And it just seems like there's not too much like, you know how like maybe like back in the day it wouldn't be super unusual to see like a punk versus ska show, you know. Yeah. So would you is that something that you think is probably for the better of not mixing up everything? Just because like when you
I feel like whenever I do play festivals, I love it because there's so much different stuff going on, and it's not like the same thing throughout the whole show. Everybody has their, their preference,
yeah
and I feel like it's a great way to expose people of the roots and then to also have people that have their own style. So, I mean, I totally agree with I mean, I guess it depends. Obviously, it has to flow and stuff, but sometimes like man, I've played shows with the most random like bands and like festivals and
yeah
just all mixed up. But I feel like it's a good thing because you're kind of attracting like a new crowd that you didn't even think you would attract.
yeah
So honestly, like I'm all about mixing it up. It's cool to have a theme and to like stick to a style, but I feel like you kind of like sell yourself short if you just keep it that way because you're not exposing people from the outside to what you're doing. And I think the whole point of being a musician is drawing everybody and not just like a certain type of crowd. Like I don't really like to see it that way. I like to see it where I love this music and I want to like show everybody what it's about. Even people don't know what it is, like, and honestly, sometimes like from my experience when I do shows where it's like strictly that style, I mean they're supportive, but I feel like when I do shows when it's like I'm playing in front of a lot of new crowds and there's like different people around, dude, like I sell so much merch. It's crazy. Like for
yeah
example, when I toured with Mon Laferte, somebody who's totally different genre than me, but we have similarities
mm,
and it worked.
yeah
Like I did not know what to expect. I was like nervous, like, okay, this is like a Spanish speaking crowd. So, that's another thing I had to do as an artist, which I never done before, is like speak Spanish to the crowd. And like, I felt like it was respectful and like I wanted everybody to understand what I was saying. I mean, obviously all my music isn't in Spanish, but at least I can interact with the crowd. And I was over here thinking like, oh, they might think like, what the heck is this? Like, what am I listening to? Like, because they're there for Mon.
mm,
But my point is that when you put yourself in those positions where it's a challenge, you kind of like it makes you grow as an artist. And I did good on merch. Like people like dug what I was doing and they don't even know what Rocksteady or SKA or anything was. So that's my point. Like if you mix it up and you play for different people, you're gonna attract different types of people and your crowd's more diverse. And I'm all about that. I'm not about just trying to attract one type of person, like, oh, only these people are gonna like it. I should just play these shows because that's where everyone's gonna like it. I feel like don't play it safe all the time. You gotta put yourself in different situations. So I like when shows are mixed up,
yeah
because we're all about the same thing. We're all like in our own scene, doing our own thing, but they kind of like work, depending on. I mean, I've done shows with rockabilly bands and just different stuff, and it's always like been dope. I feel I've had good experiences. I mean, yeah, there's people that are probably like it's not their thing, they're not into it, but there's still a lot of other people that are like down with both as
mm,
I am. So I think because I'm like into so many styles that I don't mind mixing it up. That's kind of like where I'm coming from and all that.
gotcha. Right now when you were talking about the Mon Laferte shows, was that tour just from November of that year, or did you tour
I
it
did
longer?
2 tours with her.
Okay.
So, God, man, I'm so bad with years. I feel like time has just flown by so quick that
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, was that 2015, 2016, or 2017? Like, I put them all together because I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
I did like 2 separate tours. The first one was more dates. The second one was fewer dates, but I did 2 separate ones. I'm talking about the first one I did when I first started touring with her, but it was a dope experience. Like she's huge, and this was like before
Yeah.
she was even as huge as she is now, but she was already a star in my eyes.
Yeah.
I personally didn't, I've never had heard of her, and when I got the offer I was like, oh, let me check her out, and I'm like, whoa, this is like way different than what I do, but I dig her. Like she has this like edginess to her, and she is just amazing live, and her band was amazing, and they were all like super cool. So I feel like you should never limit yourself, because what if I would have been like, I don't know, like if that's gonna work, blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah.
You would have
You know,
missed
you
it.
get like scared about it. Like it's normal, it's human. But
Yeah.
if I would have had that attitude, I wouldn't have had